Yeah, hi folks. Yes, Cop26 must have been the biggest climate change scam ever. Now we had the usual hypocrites flying in on their private jets, but this summit seemed to be much worse. When Hollywood-style propaganda gets delivered instead of scientific fact, we automatically know something is amiss. Anyway, I have a lot to cover today, so let's get started.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species?
Wow, a socialist dinosaur.
Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction.
Anyway, now to their propaganda movie.
There will now be a short film, a message from our planet to all of us, Earth to Cop.
Commuter chaos this morning and delays for the day as high levels of water brought services to a standstill.
High levels of water, yet they're driving through it easily.
The Met Office says we should be braced for more of this. Forget summer, they say. It's going to...
Now have a look at the link below and you'll see that this restaurant is below sea level.
But the evidence in the record now is becoming clearer and clearer.
No longer assume the temperature of the world is
Прошло
stable.
более 70 лет, но все еще загрязненность воздуха остается
And for
основной.
the average American, that carbon footprint is about 16 tons of carbon emissions.
What about Cop26? What is COP?
The potential threat to the surrounding natural environment. You can see the ocean becoming more acid
of what the UN is calling the world's first climate change famine.
Again, cars driving through so-called heavy rain.
7 anni più caldi della storia scritta si sono verificati tutti da 2000.
Periods of early frost.
Now let's have a closer look at that. I'll just go back a bit there. So you can see that again.
natural environment. You can see the ocean becoming more acid
Of what the UN is calling the world's first climate change famine. 7 anni più caldi della storia scritta si sono verificati tutti da 2000.
Periods of early frost.
Now let's have a closer look at that. Yeah, so let's scroll down here a bit. A strong storm has hit the Tokyo Olympics. Yes, it was so strong. It cancelled the Olympics, didn't it? Oh, hold on. No, it didn't.
The frequency of hurricanes.
If the scientists are correct in their fears and predictions,
It's a sure sign of climate change.
No, don't be sorry.
And that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations.
Now let's have a closer look at that.
Hey,
Greenland tsunami caused by a gigantic landslide. It had nothing to do with climate change whatsoever. So who and what is driving this?
Third, this COP must be a moment of solidarity. The $100 billion a year climate finance commitment in support of developing countries must become a 100 billion climate finance reality. And this is critical to restoring trust and credibility. I welcome the efforts led by Canada and Germany to help us get there. It is an important first step, but it delays the largest support for years, and it doesn't give clear guarantees. And beyond 100 billion, developing countries need far greater resources to fight COVID-19, to build resilience and pursue sustainable development.
Sustainable development. UN Agendas 21 and 30. The transfer of wealth from the first world to the third world. Global communism. Now let's find out a bit more about this a-hole. For many years, Mr. Guterres was active in the Socialist International, Communist International. He served as president from 1999 until mid-2005. Now, who does that remind you of?
So we got to understand the International Union of Socialist Youth is the youth wing of the Socialist International. Now that was set up after World War II to basically as an alliance of socialist parties all over the world. In recent years it's got a lot less socialist and a lot more communist. When the former communist parties of Eastern Europe started joining, you knew there was a problem. You know, the Socialist Party of Bulgaria, which used to be the Communist Party of Bulgaria. The Socialist Party of Albania, which used to be the Communist Party of Albania. The Socialist Party of Poland. All of these parties have joined, as have the Nicaraguan Sandinistas, Fatah, the terrorist group from the Palestinian territories, Frelimo, the former Communist Party from Mozambique, and a whole range of others. The Communist Party of China has had observer status at the Socialist International. The Socialist International is effectively a communist organisation today. So when Jacinda Ardern was the president of that should raise some pretty big alarm bells. But in New Zealand, they think, well, that was just when she was...
Are the dots connecting?
Economic growth accompanied by worsening social outcomes is not success. It is failure. And turning things around requires changing both the way we think and the way we act and the way we measure success. So to tackle these issues in New Zealand, the government I'm proud to lead is doing something not many other countries have tried. We've incorporated the principles of the 2030 Agenda into our domestic policy making.
The 2030 Agenda into our domestic policy making. Yeah, there it is, folks. Anyway, I'll just fast forward a bit.
Now, I know we all applaud these advances and the effort taken to achieve them, but in many areas, progress has stalled. Despite global economic growth, the distribution of benefits remains uneven. There has been little change in income inequality, and in some areas, we are going backwards with rising global hunger, rising global greenhouse gas emissions, alarming pressure on natural resources and in the environment. I believe that the change in approach that we have tried and worked hard to adopt in New Zealand, we should perhaps try and work hard to adopt globally. It's about acceleration, but it's also about transformation, how to improve people's well-being and achieve a productive economy at the same time in a way that enhances rather than diminishes our environment and leaves no one behind. Now, internationally, we've had to strengthen the enablers of sustainable development, and we take a values-driven approach. This means prioritising things like human rights, effective governance and democracy, gender equality, women's empowerment, and the sound stewardship of the environment. We also look for practical ways to get closer to our shared goals, and I want to give you an example, and that is our work alongside others to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies and other environmentally harmful subsidies is just one more example. There is no point in subsidising the climate change that we seek to avert. But ultimately, we need more collaboration, more examples of the international community prioritising our collective global well-being.
Our collective global well-being. Global communism. Not convinced yet? Now, folks, listen carefully to ScoMo's words.
But the other thing, Paul, I'd say to your viewers who are concerned about this is this. The world is making their decisions about this. They are deciding whether it's in Japan or South Korea or indeed the United States and Europe and other places. They're making decisions, and those decisions about how they're responding to climate change obviously have an impact on Australia. We understand that. They're not decisions Australia are taking, they're decisions other countries are taking. And so we understand that the world economy is changing, and we have to ensure that we can protect Australia from those negative impacts and realise any opportunities, and there are many of them, that will come to us. And so what we've done today is enabled Australia to realise that. We can't just shut Australia off from the rest of the world and think none of that is happening. It is happening. Investment will go in different directions. The cost of what we borrow will go up. All of these things will happen unless we can work with this.
Unless we can work with this. Now, do you see what's going on here, folks? ScoMo is kind of forced into this global communism. Otherwise, Australia will sink. The rest of the world will shun him, or the globalist, the global communists will shun him. It's really, really nasty what's going on. Anyway, here's something else they're not telling you.
The steaks are off the table. The chopped lamb chops, we get rid of them. We get rid of the beef steaks. It's all going to be plant-based food from now on if we sign up to Glasgow's Cop26, correct?
Well, look, Rowan, that's what the documents say. Let's be very clear. These are the draft agreements worked up by the IPCC, by the United Nations. This is not some wish list from Greenpeace, although perhaps I repeat myself, but these are the official documents here. They're the official documents that say they want to put a tax on red meat. They want to try and encourage or make people move to a plant-based diet. And I don't think people really realise when they hear net zero, that means they want to transition you to be a vegan.
Anyway, folks, today I'll leave you with this. Greta finally gets something right.
You can shove your climate crisis up your arse. You can shove your climate crisis up your arse. You can shove your climate crisis, you can shove your climate crisis, you can shove your climate crisis up your ass.